Eric and Lyle Menendez were the young sons of a wealthy movie executive. On August 20th, 1989, they brutally murdered their mother and father. They thought they'd committed the perfect murder. This is a recording of Lyle Menendez, around an hour and a half after the murders.
Beverly Hills Emergency? What's the problem? What's the problem?
I'm trying to kill my parents.
Pardon me?
I'm trying to kill my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The person who shot, they were shot? We have a hysterical person on the phone. 317-4257.
Your home and who was shot?
I have a listing for 722 Elm Drive.
You need to remain calm.
722 Elm Drive.
We'll help you, sir. We're gonna be
Priority
helping you.
call.
We'll be helping
All
you out.
units
You need to
respond
remain
to
calm. You need to
722
get
Elm
information.
Drive. We have a possible
We need
double
as much
homicide.
information as possible.
Hold right there, guys.
Easy. What's going on, hey?
What's up? What's up?
On the other side of LA, Detective Les Zola received a call which would be the start of the most difficult and shocking case of his career.
Was my boss, Sergeant Tom Edmonds. He said, we just had a double murder. It was a husband and wife in the hills of Beverly Hills, and they were shotgunned to death. Come on in. I told him, but I'm still on vacation. He said, no, you're not. Come in. When I get a call like that, my mind immediately starts racing. I try to start figuring out what happened from the very onset of the phone call. So in this case, although I didn't have much information, I did have the knowledge that it was a husband and wife killed in their home, and I just tried to figure out, well, was it a burglary? Was it somebody they knew? My mind is always trying to get a head start.
Hey, Tom.
Pretty bad in here. Saranaki and Butkus were the first on the scene. They know about as much of it as I do. I've got the lab techs inside, but I told them to hold off till you got here. Maybe you want to take a look at it first.
First of all, on a crime scene, as far as a murder crime scene, when you go into the house, it's an eerie silence to it. And I always feel that when I go into a murder crime scene. I can recall just having this dryness about my throat, so it makes me swallow hard. And I immediately saw a television, a big screen television on to my left. I walked forward into the room and saw Jose Menendez. His head was slumped to one side. And I surveyed what I could immediately. And there was blood on the walls. There was brain matter on the ceiling. Having so many gunshot wounds to each of them, as I said, it was an overkill. So it was somebody that had a great deal of hatred, or just kept shooting and shooting and shooting, almost like in a frenzy for some reason. And I just had to figure out what that reason was. Kitty was laying on the floor on her right side. It was a little strange because her eyes were open, and one eye was not damaged at all by the shotgun blast. And you almost had to think, because of her location on the floor, that she was trying to get away and that she actually saw who was murdering her.
While Zola began his investigations at the crime scene, Sergeant Tom Edmonds was interviewing Eric and Lyle Menendez in Beverly Hills Police Headquarters.
We want to get the people responsible for
Initially,
your parents' death
basically
as
that
soon as
night,
possible.
they were
I need you
witnesses.
to think very carefully. Do you have any idea who might be behind this?
I believe he died because I believe it was organized crime. And he died because he
Lyle
wouldn't
Menendez
cooperate
told
with his
Edmonds that he thought the mafia might be responsible for his
I know that
father's
this is going to be
death.
very difficult for you. I need you to talk me through everything that happened tonight.
And we went out about 8 to go to the movies.
The brothers said that they went to the movies and gone home in the event that they wanted to get something to drink because Eric had a fake ID at home. And that's when they entered, saw the lights on in the family room, the television on, assumed that the parents were still awake, went in and discovered the bodies.
That's when I called 911.
Eric was much more upset and sobbing, where Lyle was composed and able to answer questions. Initially, we certainly weren't going to think that they were suspects in any manner. We were treating them as a grieving family, the grieving sons, and as witnesses, and especially we were cognizant that they were the ones that found their parents, and I'm sure that they were having some problems with that psychologically. Because there was no physical evidence around except for the bodies themselves and, of course, any shotgun pellets that were inside the bodies. So somebody methodically looked through the crime scene to locate and remove any evidence, being the shotgun
What do
shells.
you think the approximate time of death was?
It immediately made me feel it was some type of a hit or something planned, that somebody knew that they would get caught had we had this extra evidence. I mean, your mind is just racing to figure out what is going on here. The whole night was spent investigating this crime scene. The coroner, after a couple hours, left with the bodies of Jose and Kitty. And about 8:30 in the morning, another officer came to us
Lyle
and said
Eric
that
Menendez are out front.
Lyle was
They
there
want to come inside.
and wanted to pick up
They wanna
some
pick up
things
some things.
for the day. Lyle was the spokesman for the two. He seemed very much in control. He was not outwardly distressed or upset. And of course, I realize that everybody treats different things in their life differently. And Lyle said that he wanted to pick up some stuff because he was staying at his tennis coach's house. And I said, well, what is it that you want to pick up? You want to pick up some clothes?
It's our tennis equipment.
Well, I want to pick up my tennis equipment.
I can't do that for you today.
Okay, I'll come back.
It just struck me as, these guys don't seem right. They're not grieving properly for the death of their parents. And it made me think, what's up with these guys?
Not only because it happened in Beverly Hills, which sees about one murder every couple of years usually. A family, well, at least the parents were killed, and that's a very unusual thing, even in some poorer communities. So that naturally made it leap out to anybody on the news desk.
45-year-old Jose Menendez was chief executive officer of Live Entertainment Incorporated. His employees were stunned. A spokeswoman said he was the last person one would expect to be a murder victim.
He was not only well respected within the industry, but well liked, both internally in this company and externally. I can't imagine that it was anyone who would have anything but good to say about him.
But even in the first 24 hours of the investigation, Beverly Hills police were hearing a very different story about Jose.
It seemed like everybody we talked to that was under Jose Menendez thought that he was a pretty tough boss. He was, you could say that he was hated as a boss. A lot of people didn't like him and thought that he was pretty much a son of a bitch. And, there was a lot of people that weren't sorry to see him go.
Beverly Hills Police.
Yeah, hi, my friend Lyle.
Who?
Donovan Goodrow. I just wanted to get a message.
Donovan who?
Donovan Goodrow. I just wanted to, pass my condolences.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give it to Lyle and Eric.
Hey, Les, you want to know where we're at with Jose Menendez?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Jose Menendez, 44 years old, recently appointed president of Live International Video Entertainment.
Officers quickly learned that Jose had upset one man in particular, the former owner of Live Entertainment, Noel Bloom, who was involved with the porn industry and rumored to have strong mafia ties.
Porn side of the business, but they didn't get along at all.
There was, of course, the angle of it possibly being mafia-oriented because of the porno business. I mean, there's a lot of angles that we had to look at.
4 days after the murders, Lyle and Eric Menendez arranged a memorial service for their parents at the Directors Guild of America on Sunset Boulevard. Zoller and his partner went along to see if there were any strange faces or suspects among the mourners. But once again, it would be the brothers who would catch Zoller's eye.
The memorial service was set, I believe, for 11 o'clock. Eric and Lyle were probably an hour late. They didn't care about anybody but themselves. They just arrived when they wanted to arrive. When they finally entered the memorial service, they didn't look like they were grieving at all. It was just almost like a show for them. They were there, they were the center of attention. They just waltzed in. Now it can proceed because we are here. I mean, that was their demeanor almost throughout the whole investigation. It just doesn't seem like they were grieving like two sons who not only lost their parents to murder, but actually discovered their parents that were murdered. Every time that we had any dealings with Eric and Lyle, it always put a big question mark in my mind. Are they actually responsible?
Zola's inquiries into the possibility of a mob killing had led nowhere. And although the brothers' behavior was making him more and more suspicious, he'd been unable to uncover any possible motive for such vicious murders.
It seemed like, the family was close-knit. Kitty was helping with the schoolwork and running them from this practice to that practice and this game to that game. And, Jose was there for them at night and the weekends, and, he'd ask them how their day was. It seemed like a very normal family.
There were no signs of any bitter arguments between Eric and Lyle and their parents, but Zola discovered that the brothers had been given free rein as children and become rowdy teenagers. They'd been in trouble at high school and had even been involved in a string of burglaries.
One thing in particular I found out, they had burglarized friends of Eric's from high school.
Soon Zola learned that Eric and Lyle had arrived late at the memorial service because they'd been to buy Rolex watches and money clips. In fact, Eric and Lyle had been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars from Jose's personal life insurance policy. Lyle bought a new $64,000 Porsche. Both brothers rented luxury apartments in Marina del Rey.
Listen, I want to see if maybe we could meet this afternoon.
And Lyle was also busy trying to establish himself as a young entrepreneur, buying a chain of restaurants in Princeton. Soon, John Johnson and Ron Sobel, the reporters from the LA Times, would share Zola's suspicions.
It's one of the first things we had actually tried to do, to sit them down and talk to them. I mean, it's a standard newspaper feature story. How are they doing after their parents were murdered?
Hi, Johnson and Sobel, LA Times.
The first thing is that they met us at the door, and Lyle was very much in his new mode as a family mogul, very officious but polite, welcoming, and playing the young businessman. But I asked the question, how are you doing? I mean, trying to elicit some feelings about, it's really hard for us to get on with our lives. Our parents meant everything to us, that kind of a response. Instead, Lyle sort of leaned back in the chair and he says, well, it's been quite a while since the murders happened now, and this is, a few weeks. And we're pretty much over it and ready to move on with our lives. That shocked me.
What? They did it.
The reporters had asked for names and numbers of some of their friends for the article. A call to one friend of Lyle's, Glenn Stevens, would put Johnson ahead of the police and give him the big story he was waiting for.
I was asking him some general questions, and he almost volunteered. He said, well, you know, I don't know who could have done it, but part of me thinks that Lyle might have even done it. He also told me about, you know, the computer in the house that had a new will being written on it. And he said that, if I remember right, that Lyle was concerned about this.
The LA Times is running a story almost daily on the murder.
Hey, Les, I got John Johnson from the Times online, too.
I'll take it in my office.
He said that he had learned that Lyle had hired somebody to look at the family computer. He was concerned that he was being disinherited.
Any luck?
Well, the files are still there, but looks like they might have been copied over by mistake. We could still get them open, but it could take some time.
Tried to open the
maybe
files and said,
25
I can't
hours.
open the files either.
Lucky.
That looks like they've been written over. So Lyle evaluated that and said, well,
I don't have to have the data. I just want to find it and get it off.
that is what I want you to do is I want you to erase everything so that nobody can gain any information from it. In fact, why don't you erase everything and make it look like you weren't even here, that you weren't even able to do anything.
You know, I don't want any trace that the files were even there.
At times it seemed like we were outmanned and out-financed by the LA Times. John Johnson had called, in essence, to tell us that they were running the story the following day. I thought it was a good opportunity to go up and put a little pressure on Eric and Lyle.
This was October 31st, 10 weeks after the murders.
Hi, it's Les Zoller from the Beverly Hills Police
I went up to the house,
Is this Eric?
and lo and behold, Eric was home. Lyle wasn't. He was on the East
Can I come in?
Coast.
Can I offer you anything, Mr. Zoller?
So I proceeded to tell Eric that the LA Times is going to write an article about the computer.
I'm going to be straight with you, Eric. The Times are writing an article that indicates you, especially Lyle, are suspects.
And I told Eric that I was beginning to have doubts about Lyle.
To erase some of the files dealing with your mom and dad's will. So the focus is on Lyle. We don't know if you were involved in any of that or not.
You know, I finally asked Eric, I said, do you think that Lyle's involved in this?
You think Lyle hired someone to kill your parents?
No.
And he looked and he said, well, I don't think so.
I don't think he's involved in this.
It wasn't an emphatic no. It was almost where he had doubt.
He'll be happy to talk to you when he gets back from the East Coast. Have him give you a call.
You be sure and do that. I'd hate to think he's keeping anything from us.
After I spoke to Eric, as it turns out, I found out later, Eric fell apart. He couldn't live with himself for what he had done.
Hello, can I speak to Lyle, please? It's his brother. Then where did he go? No message.
He contacted the psychologist that he had had previously for these burglaries and said that he needed to talk to him immediately. The psychologist, who was Jerry Oziel, said, you know, what's this in reference to? And he said, well, it's in reference to the way I'm feeling about the death of my parents.
Yes, Dr. Oziel, please.
And Jerry Oziel cleared a schedule and said, okay, I can see you this day.
Judalon Smith, Dr. Oziel's lover and a former patient, had arranged to meet the psychologist at his consulting rooms. The conversation she would overhear that night would be repeated again and again in court and become critical in proving the brothers' guilt.
What's up? I'm sorry, Jerry. Sorry,
Come on in. Come on in. Now sit down.
Eric
Can I
had
get
a
you something?
conscience. Eric went to Oziel because he couldn't live with what he had done. Once he realized what he had done and the complexity of it,
What is it you wanted to speak to me about?
it preyed on his mind and his psyche, and he couldn't live with himself.
Just take a deep breath, relax. It's just you and I.
I've been having all of these suicidal thoughts recently.
Jerry Oziel spoke to him, and Eric told him everything, that he and Lyle had committed these murders.
He did it. We killed our parents. Lyle and I killed my mom and dad.
Zola would only hear about Eric's confession 5 months later. But on the 31st of October, Eric told his psychologist about the murders. Anxious to cover his back, Dr. Oziel asked his girlfriend, Judalon Smith, to listen into his conversation from the adjoining office.
I want you to call Lyle. So we need to get him down here.
Dr. Oziel convinced Eric to call Lyle and have Lyle come in so that Jerry could evaluate his demeanor and to see whether anybody, especially Eric, was in danger. So Eric called
Lyle
and told Lyle that he was with Jerry
Sarah.
Oziel and that he had explained what they had done.
I'm here with Dr. Oziel.
What's going on?
I told him what we did.
Eric, stay there, okay? Don't go anywhere and don't let Oziel go anywhere, you hear me? Do not say another word about what happened until I get there, you got it?
Okay.
If something's come up, I'll give you guys a call later.
Lyle thought it was a good idea. They bought the guns out of town.
Judalon Smith heard Eric say that the brothers had bought the shotguns from a store in San Diego. But it would be her account of the next few minutes which would prove crucial to the case against Eric and Lyle.
Lyle.
So the first thing that Lyle did, I mean, he was extremely upset, and he said,
Can't believe you did this.
I can't believe that you did this, my brother. In fact, I don't even have a brother.
It's like I don't even have a brother.
He says, now you know what we're going to have to do
realize
to
what this
Jerry
means?
Oziel. He says, we're going to have to get rid of him.
We're gonna have to do to Dr. Oziel exactly what we did to Mom and Dad and anyone associated with him.
All right, now let's wait a minute here. Let's just all calm down, okay?
Eric got so
Lyle,
upset with Lyle
sit down.
confronting him with this and yelling at him,
I don't want any part of it.
and he just left in tears. And Jerry followed Lyle to the elevator.
Lyle, wait, please.
Listen. I can kind of understand Eric, but he just shouldn't have done this. Now we're gonna have to take care of it, okay?
So he looked at him and he says, is that a threat?
Am I to take this as a threat?
Good luck, Dr.
No,
Oziel.
Lyle, wait, Lyle. Wait. Be...
Eric, come on. Get in the car. Let's get out of here.
Keep going
Come
like
on.
this, Lyle.
Eric.
Keep going like
Eric.
this, Lyle.
Listen to me. You gotta pull yourself together. We're both going to San Quentin. Do you understand that? Huh? Let's go. Get in the car. Give me the keys.
Lyle, wait, listen. Let's go upstairs and talk about this, please. Lyle, I'm not going to tell anyone about this. I can't. Patient
Dr.
privilege.
Oziel.
It's the law. Please. Lyle!
2 weeks after Zola's meeting in the Menendez home, Craig Signorelli, a close friend of Eric's, called up and asked to meet with Zola. Up to that point, Signorelli had been reluctant to talk to detectives, and Zola had assumed he was trying to protect his friend.
Right.
He said, well, I have something to say. I said, well, just say it. And he proceeded to say that shortly after the murders, he had gotten together with Eric at the house in Beverly Hills, and Eric said, do you want to know what happened?
So, you want to know how it happened?
And he said, well, sure. So Eric actually walked him through the crime scene.
That night, Lyle and I had come back to get my fake ID so we could go out and get a couple of drinks. Hey, Mom! We're heading over to Perry's to go get a few
Eric had
drinks.
told Signorelli that he and Lyle had come back to pick up his fake ID, and that he'd walk back to the car to find Lyle waiting with the shotguns. But it would later emerge that Eric and Lyle had both planned to commit the murders that night. It was the maid's night off, and Jose and Kitty would typically fall asleep in front of a movie on Sunday evening. Sick of their demanding father, they wanted a divorce from their parents without the financial penalties. Tension between Jose and the brothers had risen steadily over the summer. Lyle was about to be expelled from Princeton for poor academic performance and bad behavior, and Jose disapproved of Eric's friends and lifestyle. Once again, their father was making noises about disinheriting them both. The brothers had rationalized that if they killed Jose, they would have to kill their mother too. This would ensure there was no one to suspect them, and no one in the way of their inheritance. After collecting the empty shotgun shells from around their parents' bodies, they drove down Mulholland Drive, a long, steep road that winds from the Hollywood Hills down to the ocean.
Do it.
Come on, let's go.
The brothers had carefully planned an alibi. After disposing of the shotguns, they were due to meet a friend for some drinks at the Cheesecake Factory.
Eric, you're gonna have to pull it together by the time we get to Perry's.
I can't see the end.
What do you mean you can't? That's the plan, Eric. We've already made arrangements.
I know. Just please, no.
But Eric was too overcome by emotion, and instead, they returned home.
Then we're gonna have to go home. And call 911.
Hey, it could have happened, huh?
After it was over, Eric said it could have happened. And I said, well, why didn't you tell us earlier? He says, because of Eric's statement it could have happened, I wasn't sure that it did happen. And I said, well, what do you mean you weren't sure? He said, well, Eric and I wrote plays all the time. We wrote the perfect burglary, the perfect robbery, the perfect murder. And he says, I didn't know whether he was just saying that as he was thinking that that would have been the perfect murder of his parents. So, and my first thought in hearing this is that we've got him. You know, we've got enough information now, enough evidence to arrest him.
Look.
And I remember thinking about it and then calling the DA who we've been talking to, Pam Ferraro.
But Zola would be disappointed.
Hi, Pam.
Pam Ferraro felt Eric's statement,
So,
it
let's
could have
start.
happened, meant his story didn't quite amount to a confession.
I need to pick your brain about Craig
Les
Signorelli.
Solar and his partner were under a great deal of pressure to, arrest someone and get this case closed. And during the course of the investigation, the detectives kept coming to me and saying, is this enough? And I kept saying, no. You need one piece of great physical evidence because we know they did it, but we only get one shot at prosecuting them.
Why'd you get Signorelli to wear a wire? I caught him talking to Eric about it.
We got the idea to wire Craig, and meet with Eric and see whether we can get the same statement by Eric. Now we had to approach Craig with that idea. I was particularly concerned because they were such good friends. I gave Craig a call and I told him what we needed and why we needed it, and to my surprise, he agreed to it. We arranged to meet Craig, and we met him a couple of miles away from the restaurant, up above the beach, so that we could instruct him and put the wire on him. We had a backup wire in the event that one didn't work.
Okay, you put your checks in this, and you put this between you and him during the meal.
Okay. When they were both in the restaurant, we knew that that was the time that most likely the subject would be broached. And it seemed like whenever the conversation came to anything, the noise was higher because of the people talking and the dishes clattering. It was just noises. We had a hard time listening to what was going on.
Is this the best sound we can get?
Yeah, that's what we got. Craig actually told Eric that the police had been after him, thinking that he was a suspect. And that kind of set the tone where Craig could actually ask Eric, did you murder your parents, in a joking way.
Well, did you kill your parents? No, I did not.
And Eric said no. Once I heard the denial, I thought, well, we didn't get the statement that we wanted on tape. And we were, in essence, right where we were before Craig told us anything. I didn't think it was any good at all. The problem we had with this investigation is we needed evidence. We had none. If the brothers were suspects in this, we couldn't even use fingerprints at the crime scene because they lived there. So in essence, we needed a confession, and then a confession is only as good as the statement itself, and if we can prove it. When I was investigating Menendez's case, I lived about 42 miles from Beverly Hills, so I spent a lot of time on the road, and my mind would just start drifting about what I was going to do with the case, and it would always go back to that scene, the night that I met Jose and Kitty Menendez. That stillness in the room. I saw Jose many times in my mind, just slumped to his right, and his head was kind of off-centered because a shotgun blast had distorted it so badly. And there was blood everywhere. I don't know what it was, but that's my worst memory of the case, is that crime scene when I first walked in, and I just realized that these two people had been savagely murdered.
As weeks turned into months, Zola and the DAs began to worry. Jose Menendez's estate was about to be released from probate, and Eric and Lyle would end up with his fortune. It wasn't until March 5th of the following year that Zola finally got his break. Judalon Smith, the woman who overheard Eric's confession to his psychologist, was now Dr. Oziel's ex-patient and ex-girlfriend. She approached an attorney for advice on taking legal action against Oziel.
I got a phone call from the district attorney in Beverly Hills, and he explained that through a friend of his, a Judalon Smith had called and wanted to complain about Jerry Oziel. And in complaining about Jerry Oziel, she had mentioned the Menendez brothers.
Can you give me that number of that attorney that you know?
I wasn't sure whether I could call Judalon Smith as a detective and have her speak to me, so I decided to have this mutual friend of the district attorney and Judalon introduce me as a friend of his.
Hello, Judalon. Hope you don't mind, but I brought a friend with me. Les Zoller, Judalon Smith.
Hello.
Why don't you come on in?
Her main concern was to make sure that Jerry Oziel paid for what he had done to her.
I think Jerry's telling me a lot of things he wants me to believe and say. I mean, He's very manipulative.
And in speaking about Jerry Oziel, she
I think
just
he's
kind of threw in
abusing
our
his
lap
powers.
that, oh, by the way,
I mean, I know for a fact I don't need this much medication.
the Menendez brothers killed their
And
parents.
the Menendez brothers, they definitely murdered their parents. I was there when one of the brothers came in and told Jerry all about it. Then the other one came in and he was very angry. Will you excuse me for a moment?
And I told this acquaintance, I said, you know, I've got to tell her that I'm a detective so that she can realize that I'm going to be using the information that she's giving us. I explained that I had knowledge of the Menendez case. Well, in actuality, I'm a detective for the Beverly Hills Police Department.
I need to explain who I am.
That's okay, officer. I guess to you or...
And it was like, no big deal, okay. And then she continued with her story.
Jerry's got himself caught up in some
She
really
told
bad
Zola that Oziel continued to see the brothers for counseling, telling them that he'd help them understand why they killed their parents. Julian said Oziel had taped these sessions, so by 6 the next morning, Zola and the DA had search warrants for Oziel's home.
And Jerry Oziel's wife came to the door.
I'm Elliot Alderhoff of the LA County District Attorney's Office. We have a warrant to search your home.
What?
We have a warrant to search your house. We're here to recover some audio tapes
And
belonging
she
to your
was
husband.
cooperative, but said,
Do you mind if I get dressed first?
can I go get some clothes on? I'll be right back. And Elliot said, yes. And I looked at Elliot and I said, Elliot.
Mind if I go burn some tape?
She's in there destroying our evidence. And Elliot looked and he goes, damn. Damn. And then he's banging on the door.
Get the door.
We didn't find the tapes. She didn't destroy anything. And told us that what we were looking for were in a safety deposit box in a bank nearby. So we responded to the bank and obtained the tapes.
Zola and Al-Hadef quickly listened to some of the recordings. After a few minutes, it became obvious that the taped conversations between the brothers and Oziel were enough for the DA to get an arrest warrant.
We got it.
Okay, guys.
There was a risk that laws protecting patient-therapist confidentiality would prevent the tapes being used against the brothers in court. But the DAs hoped the threats Lyle made to Dr. Oziel would erase that confidentiality barrier. With a confession on tape, Zola expected 2 easy convictions. On March 8th, officers took up positions on Elm Drive, outside the Menendez mansion.
So we're going to Cheesecake Factory?
Unless you have a better idea.
Sounds good.
Eric was apparently out of the country, but a surveillance team had spotted Lyle at the family home.
They're moving.
Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Get out of the car!
You see your hands?
Flat on the ground. Put your hands out.
It's no big secret that the Menendezes had an estate that was worth millions of dollars. And then, of course, who knows what really goes on within a family. Just recently.
Later that afternoon, Marvin Iannone, the chief of police, held a triumphant press conference announcing Lyle's arrest.
Eric Menendez is believed to be in Israel and is being sought by detectives of this department with the assistance of the Israeli government, U.S. State Department, and Interpol.
There were rumors that Eric would flee Israel and go on the run, but within 24 hours, he landed at Los Angeles International Airport, where Zola was waiting for him.
You could just feel that he had a relief upon him. Eric had a hard time with what he had done, which is why he went to Dr. Oziel to begin with. But it seemed like almost a relief that he had finally been caught for what he had done.
Even with Eric and Lyle in custody, Zola's job was far from over. He still needed some physical evidence to strengthen the case against the brothers.
Our next step is to find the gun store where the guns were purchased down in San Diego. Sergeant Edmonds and I Drove down to San Diego and spent the whole day looking through gun records. The last gun store, which was a big 5, going through the records, and all of a sudden I looked, and there was gun purchases by a Donovan Goodrow.
Donovan who?
And I remembered that name, Donovan Goodrow, as a friend of Lyle's. Looking at that name, and I purchased those shotguns, I felt like jumping for joy.
Eric and Lyle were arraigned within 48 hours. They were smartly dressed in black suits and seemed unruffled by the charges leveled against them. They pleaded not guilty to murder. The brothers would spend the next 3 years in prison, waiting for the case to come to court. In that time, the prosecution scored a major victory. A Superior Court judge ruled that because of Lyle's threats, Oziel's tapes could be used as evidence. But the defense were also working hard with Eric and Lyle in those 3 years. When the legal battle finally began, the brothers seemed to have undergone a transformation. Their dress, manner, and plea had all changed.
I began to realize that we had a really good case and that they were going to try to get out of it. And I actually told people, I think they're going to have to allege sexual abuse because that's the only thing I can think of that they can do to try to get out from under this.
Based upon this evidence, it will become apparent that this murder was unlawful, unjustified, and wholly premeditated, and that it was accomplished through a conspiracy into which Lyle Menendez entered with his brother, and that but for a few mistakes they made, this was almost the perfect murder.
We made our opening statement, and the defense made theirs, which sometimes they do and sometimes they wait. It was spellbinding. You could hear a feather drop.
Did you love your mom and dad?
Yes.
And on August 20th, 1989, did you and your brother kill your mother and father?
Yes.
Did you kill them for money? Is that no?
No.
Did you kill them because you wanted to pay them back for the way they had treated you?
No.
It was like watching a really good high school production. They had been in custody for a long, long time before we actually had the trial. And I am quite confident that they spent a lot of time practicing their lines.
Fondle me, and he would ask me to do the same with him, and I would touch him, and we would undress.
They did a fairly good job, and I was told by the bailiffs that after court they'd go back and they'd high-five each other because they'd done such a good job, with their riveting testimony about sexual abuse.
To watch them get up on the stand and be so emotional in front of this jury, it was really unbelievable because I had seen their emotion the day of the murder and every other time that I had dealt with them, and they never showed any of this emotion. So, of course, it was a big act for them, and I could see that it was an act. The case had a constant toll on me. It became an emotional heartache for me. I would go home and be stressed out, or I would go home and be upset with this case. And, of course, I couldn't be upset with anybody I was working with, so where did that anger and stress go? It went home. Eventually, it took its toll, and it caused my wife and I to separate and then divorce.
In his second day on the witness stand, Eric Menendez described how he burst into the room where his parents were watching television and blindly opened fire.
I was just firing as I went into the room. I just started firing.
In what direction?
In front of me.
What was in front of you?
My parents. Yeah.
But the bulk of Menendez's testimony yesterday was devoted to a detailed and emotional account of sexual abuse by his father. Abuse, Eric said, lasted from when he was 6 years old. Menendez said when he was 11, his father violently raped him for the first time.
It was a performance. And looking at the jury, you could see them almost crying with them. They could see the emotion. They could feel the emotion that the brothers were portraying on the stand. And it was all just a lie. I never uncovered any of this abuse. It was mental abuse. It was never physical abuse or sexual abuse.
By their father, as she argued that the brothers...
The jury was out for the better part of 2 weeks. And within that 2 weeks, I can't concentrate on anything. This is what I've been working on for the past so many years. The longer they're out, the more I think that it's going to be a not guilty.
At last, the judge recalled the court, but there was no verdict.
The jury and the alternate are now in the courtroom. Do any of the jurors feel there's any reasonable probability of reaching a unanimous decision? Is that all 12 of you agree? I find that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked.
The jury could not agree, and the judge ordered a retrial.
In this matter.
Once I saw that smirk on Lyle's face, it went right in line with everything I knew about Lyle. He was just a cocky, cold-blooded murderer.
The retrial gave the prosecution a chance to sharpen up their case.
Well, in the second trial, because we didn't do that the first time, we figured that, well, any testimony that's given that you don't dispute, it must be truth. So we decided that we're going to dispute everything they put on. We put our own experts on to say that they were not traumatized and it was not in self-defense. And it seemed to go a lot quicker. We actually concentrated on the crime scene a lot more. Because it was to a good end, the jury came back with a guilty. I remember just exhaling forever. It was just over. I didn't have to go through it again.
On July 2nd, 1996, Eric and Lyle were sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. They're now serving their sentences in separate California jails.
It was 7 years out of my life, from the time of the murder till the time it was complete in court. That's all I thought about for the majority of that 7 years was the Menendez brothers and the Menendez murders. When the case was finally over, I realized that I had lost a marriage, lost a family. My whole life had changed because of this case. I know that because of the time that I spent on the Menendez case, I didn't spend with my children. To this day, my children are distant from me, which I attribute to the Menendez case.
I would have never found the place probably on my own because I wasn't familiar with it. I didn't have a map of that area. I hadn't been on that mountain before. So rather than look foolish and stupid, I said, would you have the ranger meet me in the parking lot?
Let's swing down this way, gentlemen. Worst thing I ever saw.
Has anybody else been here?
And it's discomforting because I'm going to be the lead investigator working this homicide case, and I'm not familiar with the terrain, the turf. And so I'm kind of the new kid on the block at that point. But you want to try to look professional. I was dressed in a coat and tie, wingtip shoes, and it seemed like we were walking forever. And it was pitch black. And I thought, my God, who would be up here to be murdered, let alone come up here to commit a murder?
Wilderness out here.
You had to go off the trail, uphill, through the brush.
Poison ivy everywhere.
And then here's this lady's body, so vivid, because the lights are on it from the flashlights and the little portable lanterns that the officers have.
What do we got?
And all we have is a body with a pair of socks on it. It wasn't a violent-looking scene with blood and gore and chaos all around. If you were more than 15, 20 feet away, you probably couldn't tell there was a hole of blood at the back of her head. It would look like she was sleeping. And yet she had been violently murdered.
44-year-old Etta Kane had been reported missing by her husband at nightfall. Rangers had found her body 5 hours later. She had been killed with clinical precision.
The holes in the back of her head were what we call piggybacked. It was one hole, but 2 bullets from a .44 caliber gun, which is very powerful. And it was as if there was boom, boom, one right on top of the other. They were practically the same hole.
Mount Tamalpais had witnessed its first recorded homicide. A keen hiker, Etta had always loved the mountain. On that August Sunday, she was heading for East Peak, Mount Tam's highest point. She was dead before she got there. The first victim of the Trailside Killer.
There was nothing around her that was visible to the eye. There was not a campsite. There wasn't a clothes or backpack or anything else. My gut feeling was this woman was placed there. I was concerned whether or not she'd been sexually assaulted. And that whoever was the perpetrator in this had her face down with the gun to the back of her head and shot her. Once Etta Kane's body was removed, there was nothing else for us to do there that night. But yet you walked away feeling helpless, like, I don't have anything to work with here. We have a lady who's been found dead, shot, violent death. None of her clothes are available. No personal effects, nothing that would lead us at that point to make an association with the suspect. So it was an empty feeling that night when we left.
There was a chilling ritual quality to the murder scene. The arrangement of the body, the removal of clothes, the leaf on the victim's back. It was a pattern that would confront police again and again over the next 2 years. The man who would become known as the Trailside Killer lived on the other side of the Golden Gate, 10 miles from the wilderness of Mount Tamalpais in the city of San Francisco. David Carpenter was 50 years old and living at home with his elderly parents. He had a chronic stutter that had plagued him since childhood. He also had a troubled past and had served 2 long prison sentences for kidnap and rape. He was still on parole.
Yes.
He knew Mount Tamalpais well and had joined one of the many hiking clubs up there 2 months before the murder of Etta Kane. From his office, Keaton had a view of the distant mountain. But 7 months on, he was no closer to solving the Kane murder. No evidence, no witnesses, no leads.
I really appreciate your help.
Carpenter was a creature of habit and took his mother shopping every Saturday. March 8th, 1981 was no exception. He dropped her off that morning, telling her he was going to Mount Tam for a hike and would be back by nightfall. Within hours, the Trailside Killer would claim his second victim.
Sheriff's deputies say 23-year-old Barbara Schwartz hiked up here on the Matt Davis Trail on Mount Tam often.
We're assuming right now that she had died approximately 5 hours prior to us getting the call.
Yesterday, a woman witness saw Barbara on the path arguing with a man. Marin County Sheriff's deputies have been up here on Mount Tamalpais all day investigating this murder. They have 2 excellent leads in the case, though, an eyewitness and now a composite sketch of the killer. They are looking for a white male with straight dark hair between 20 and 30 years old. Yesterday, he was wearing a plaid shirt. He murdered this woman, 23-year-old Barbara Schwartz. She had lived in Mill Valley for about a year and a half and worked at a San Rafael bakery.
With this second killing, the sheriff's department was now under pressure to show results. The photo fit was their response, but Keaton had his doubts.
This did determine the direction of the case, if you will, at the time, because we had nothing else to go on. So we did have a witness, however good or bad, who said she saw somebody. We don't even know that the somebody she saw was involved in the homicide whatsoever. That's a quantum leap in itself. The witness didn't see this man assaulting Barbara Schwartz. So you saw a man in the area, obviously a good lead for the investigators if it's viable. So it's a lead and a lead only. The department chose to put out the composite thinking it's the only thing we have.
I think the evidence points to a young man who is really achieving his thrills, not particularly from a sexual assault perhaps on victims, but he's dealing with the thrill level he's achieving at the murder scene.
The young man in the plaid shirt was never identified, but his face continued to dominate the investigation for the next year. There would be 5 more deaths before the police realized they were pursuing the wrong suspect. It was Columbus Day. For 7 months, the mountain had been at peace. Until now.
It was eerie, very eerie. To me, deja vu of Etta Kane, and here we go again. Again, it was an uphill trek off the trail.
Yes. Gentlemen.
What struck me was the orderliness of her clothing. There were no scuffle marks in the ground as if there were heels dug in or a fight.
Is there an earring in her right ear?
Let me have a look. Yes, a small, round gold earring.
Another missing earring, partner.
But just from being at that scene, goosebumps that we've got somebody who's on a mission, and how many more before we catch him are going to be victims.
Ann Alderson was a 26-year-old student, home visiting her parents for the holiday. She'd been shot once in the side of the head. One of her earrings was missing, and she'd been raped.
I'll never be able to prove it, but I think that what happened to that particular crime scene, because there was evidence that Ann Alderson was sexually assaulted, and remembering she was fully clothed, is that she may have been seated on the suspect's lap, and while in that position, and maybe being assaulted, she was then shot in the back of the head, face to face, that close.
Keaton was able to piece together the last hours of Ann's life.
The day of her disappearance, she had made an effort to go over to the East Bay and visit with her elderly grandmother. And on the way home, she decided she'd stop up on Mount Tamalpais and just kind of relax, meditate, and unwind. The ranger who was working on duty that night walked into the top rim of the amphitheater off the hiking trail. He noticed this young lady sitting all by herself, and he said she was so much inside her own mind, meditating, he didn't want to bother her. He didn't want to interrupt her. That was the last time that Andrew Alderson, that we know of, was ever seen alive by anyone.
Meanwhile, the Alderson family spent a quiet day at their home in Terra Linda. There are no funeral services planned, there's nothing left to say, and no words to express their grief, just the remaining nagging question: why? In Terra Linda, I'm Hampton Pearson, News Center 4.
The first step with pursuing your investigation is who is our victim. So before she's even had a service, we're in her bedroom, looking at her personal effects, putting everything under a microscope, but also thinking, could there be someone close to her that was a suspect? Because she didn't fight. You get a little upset and a little emotional thinking, what a waste, and why does this have to happen? As you looked around her room, you could see all the things that she had done, either in school, or the pictures that she had of her family and her friends and the things that were important to her, her brother. But it surely makes you, as an investigator, become in touch with the victim. They can't speak now, and you have to speak for them. Ann Alderson probably started us on the brink of everybody becoming emotionally involved, because now we'd had a third, and we were trying frantically to resolve this issue, and there was no immediate suspect on the horizon. It was very frustrating.
They gathered by the fire station at Mount Tamalpais early this morning. Each member of the posse was given a map of the trails, a two-way radio, and a sketch and description of the murder suspect. Their instructions were simple: talk to the hikers and joggers to remind them to stick together if possible. Sheriff Al Hohenstein joined the first patrol.
What we hope to accomplish today is to have people feeling a sense of security on the mountain when they're up here, and to return to the mountain a little bit of solace.
At least 6 members of the posse at a time will fan out across the mountain on patrol. They're all volunteers. Some of them are lawyers and pilots. Others are ranchers. They say they're more than happy to help out.
Whoever was doing this knew the park extremely well. In and out, fire off these gunshots in a park filled with people on a holiday weekend and not be seen. So he was planning, walking, scouting it out like a bird of prey.
The police took hundreds of witness statements from residents, hikers, and rangers, but yielded nothing. And search teams out in the park failed to find any evidence. But while the police remained focused on Mount Tam, Carpenter switched to another state park, Point Reyes, 20 miles away on the Pacific coast. It was to be the most gruesome chapter yet in the Trailside story.
November 29th, hikers discover the first 2 of 4 victims, all found in a remote area of Point Reyes. Search parties hunting for 2 missing young women accidentally discover the bodies of a young couple buried in a shallow grave.
I carried out my assignment and proceeded for, Jesus, not more than 15 minutes along a not too heavily covered ridge, and came upon a little shoe sticking up out of some ferns, and walked a little closer and found 2 bodies.
A girl had been reported missing from off a hiking trail, and they feared the worst. And while we were driving out, we were notified that 2 bodies had been found. The upshot of the whole situation was that by the time we arrived at the park, we not only had 2, we had 4 bodies. 3 women and 1 man, all found murdered within this park. Unheard of. I'm born and raised in this county, been in the sheriff's office for 20 or more years. Unheard of. And this was on federal park land that we now had 4 murdered people.
The 2 young women had been murdered that day. Both had been shot. One had been raped. And a leaf placed on her back. The bodies of the young couple were found just 200 yards away. They had been killed 6 weeks earlier and were badly decomposed.
Increase the perimeter about 10 feet. Yeah. Let's get some more tape up here.
We didn't know whether they were connected. We didn't know if it was a homicide-suicide with one couple and the other couple a sexual assault.
Drive safe.
What do we have? We don't know what the hell we have. And it's dark, and it's wet. We needed to be able to transport these bodies and get them down to a location where we could examine them and find out, do we have a common denominator?
When the ballistics report came back, there was a common denominator, pointing to a single killer in the last 5 murders.
The bullets that were recovered from the heads of the victims all had been fired by the same gun, meaning Point Reyes, 4 bodies, and Alderson, Mount Tamalpais, and that the same gun was probably used by the same perpetrator. And now we had 2 different crime locations where the bodies were found. We had the traveling of distance, plus we had the distance and time of 6 weeks of the 2 kids that had been missing for 6 weeks. So now we had this whole investigation opening up in a much wider, broader area, but it was also focusing down to one gun, probably one perpetrator. After Point Reyes occurred, the escalation of the investigation was phenomenal. We went from about maybe a dozen people that were actively working this to in excess of 36 people. And all paper systems were done manually. There were no computers in those days. There was no central repository other than file cabinets after handwritten reports made by officers in the street. So the chaos and confusion at the Marin County Sheriff's Office was incredible.
Keaton's team received hundreds of calls, but no one phoned in with David Carpenter's name. Of all the witness statements, none resembled him. He was on parole for sex offenses, but because he'd been in a federal jail, his name didn't come up in police checks of California records. And his license plate wasn't spotted in the area either, because after November 29th, he bought a new car and moved his activities to another county. But in March 1981, Keaton and his partner Chuck Prandy got their first big breakthrough. The killer had attacked again, 100 miles away in Santa Cruz.
March 29th, Henry Cowell State Park, Santa Cruz. The victim, 20-year-old Ellen Marie Hansen, shot to death on a hiking trail. Her boyfriend survives the attack with a gunshot wound in his neck. I'm Lucy Ablin for Live on 4.
The link to the Trailside case was ballistics. The same gun had been used again. But this time, there was a survivor.
Evidently, he's young and seems to be a pretty good witness.
Where was he hit?
Bullet entered the neck and lodged behind the sternum. So he blacked out for a while. Perp must have thought he was dead too and left him there. So we may be in luck with this guy surviving down here. We finally got somebody who's got a look at this guy.
Okay, Steve, now I want you to tell me again. You and Ellen were walking up the trail. Tell me what you saw and what you thought of this guy when you first encountered him.
He was about 25 feet in front of us coming down the path, and he was grunting, kind of talking to himself.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. And we kind of made eye contact with them and smiled and kept walking.
Okay, Stephen, tell me about the second time that you and Ellen encountered this guy on the path. Tell me what happened.
We were down by the redwoods and we started coming back and we saw him again and he was standing right in front of the path and he said to us, "We meet again."
We meet again?
But he pulled up his jacket and inside of his jacket I could see the handle of a gun. And he had this, a little kind of a sinister look on his face and I was thinking that he was gonna rob us and that he wanted our money.
Don't want to hurt you. Just want to rape her.
"I just want to rape her," is what he said. And he told us to get into the bushes.
Okay, what else happened after that?
We started backing off into the bushes with our hands up and he told us to get them down, that he didn't want it to attract a lot of attention. And as we started backing up, Ellen started to say, "He's not going to shoot us. He's not going to shoot us."
I said, "Get into the woods."
And then I heard 3 shots go off. And then I went and she fell to the ground and I ran up to her and then I heard 2 more shots go off. And I remember laying there. And when I came to, Ellen was laying right next to me. And I could see that she had been shot in the back of the head.
Ellen?
And there was blood all over the place. And I could see that she was dead.
Ellen?
The park in Santa Cruz was smaller and busier than Mount Tam. And Carpenter was spotted by witnesses as he drove away. For the first time, he had left a trail.
Okay, Stephen, now tell me exactly what he looked like, any details that you can remember.
Yeah, he was tall, around maybe 6 feet tall. And
Stephen Hartle was probably the most incredible witness I've ever seen in my entire career for recall. He describes this man in such detail, it was as if he had a movie running through his brain that he saw, that he recorded indelibly forever.
He was maybe around 50 years old. He had on eyeglasses and a blue jacket, a windbreaker kind of jacket. And,
Stephen Hartle's precise description of a balding man in his 50s was a far cry from the young man in the plaid shirt. As Keaton had feared, the police had been pursuing the wrong suspect for over a year.
At first I was so angry I could spit nails. I was just livid to think that we were spending so much time on a false composite drawing. The feeling was we wasted time, we wasted energy. But you didn't have time to sit and dwell on that, to either gloat or be angry or to throw rocks. You had to now go forward and say, who is this guy positively and how do we get him into custody before somebody else dies?
But the police could not act fast enough. It was May 2nd, 1981, a month after the murder of Ellen Hansen. Carpenter's co-worker and friend, Heather Skaggs, wanted a used car. He had offered to take her to see a dealer friend of his, down near Santa Cruz. For the first time, he had targeted someone he knew.
Good morning, Mr. Carpenter.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Great, thanks. Excited about the new car.
A brand new used car, huh?
Been saving up for a long time for this.
Good.
Thank you again. I really appreciate you pulling this all together.
Oh, glad to help. And we can go check out some ferns later.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great. You know, I collect the ferns and the mosses.
Yep. No place down by Santa Cruz.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. I've never been down to Santa Cruz.
It's beautiful.
I grew up down in San Jose.
Heather's body would be found 3 weeks later, naked, shot, with one earring missing. On the day she died, Carpenter was back in San Francisco in time to go to the ballet. He'd just renewed his season ticket. Heather was reported missing by her boyfriend, who told the local police in San Jose that she'd gone off with her co-worker David Carpenter to buy a used car on the day she disappeared. Detectives Walt Robinson and Ken Womack got the case.
When this was assigned to us as a missing person, the case had been kicked around the Bureau because it was low profile. It's not significant to have an adult missing for 24 hours. It was kind of a precarious position to be in. We had no body, we had no evidence of a crime. All we had was this missing young lady that we desperately needed to find. And what ultimately became of that is Ken and I found ourselves in this tempest of a serial killer running the rampant in Marin County and Santa Cruz.
The two cops had made a routine visit to Carpenter's workplace and had spotted his red car parked out back. Ken Womack made a crucial connection to the red foreign car spotted after the Santa Cruz killing. Now they wanted to meet Carpenter.
There you go.
Ken had contacted Richard Wood, Carpenter's parole agent in San Francisco.
I'm Walt Robinson. This is my partner, Ken Womack.
David Carpenter.
We'd set an appointment up for Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Thanks for taking the time to meet us. We're
Appreciate it.
here investigating a missing persons case. Do you know Heather Skaggs?
Yes.
We wanted to approach David, but we didn't want to do it at work because he knew he was a parolee. He knew that the police visiting him at his workplace would probably be a bad thing.
When was the last time you saw Heather?
Friday afternoon, when I went home from work.
It became common knowledge that Carpenter had an appointment to meet with Heather. Now we wanted to hear what Carpenter had to say.
Is it true that you were going to help her find a car?
Yes, Saturday morning, but I overslept, so I didn't see her on Saturday.
When we asked Carpenter about the cars that he drove, Carpenter said, "I only have one car."
No, I have a black station wagon, Oldsmobile. That's.
He did not acknowledge owning a red foreign car. That was significant because his boss had pointed it out that was his car. I thought there was no way this guy could be the killer in any of the Marin or Santa Cruz County cases, basically because our living witness in Santa Cruz had stated that the killer of Ellen Hansen stepped out onto the trail and spoke in a slow, low, deliberate voice without any kind of speech impediment.
Saturday night, I went to the ballet.
And he went on to talk about how his mom was the cause of his problems in his life. And he stated that she made me take the ballet, and I really resented that.
You like ballet? I took ballet for a year when I was 9 years old.
I took ballet for a year when I was 9. Did your mother force you to take lessons?
She made me take ballet for a year, yeah. You didn't know this, right?
I regretted bringing that out in front of my partner because I never heard the end of it. But Mr. Carpenter got up in his excitement. He began to dance around, do these ballet moves that just completely floored me.
Let's see stuff.
I had opened a door and I had no clue that David Carpenter would walk completely through it.
But when it came time to do Romeo and Juliet for Parents' Night...
The startling part about this whole event was Carpenter had stopped stuttering. From that moment, we started on the ballet. It gave me a sense that this man has the same control when he's got a gun in his hand as he has right now when he's talking about the ballet or something that he's in complete control of.
You guys think I'm the #1 suspect in the murder investigation, right?
We're investigating a missing persons case, not a homicide.
I know I'm the #1 suspect. If I'm not, I should be.
David, do you know who the Trailside Killer is? Are you telling us that you're the Trailside Killer? A normal person isn't going to throw that kind of information in the officer's face and say, "Come and get me, I dare you." That's the feeling or the sense that I got out of this character. And the more we talked with him, the deeper in my gut the sickness was feeling that this man's going to walk out of here today and walk into the redwood forest in Santa Cruz and Marin County and take another innocent life.
Thanks for your time. Thank you. I hope Heather hasn't been murdered. I hope she hasn't been raped.
We hope not.
As Carpenter left that meeting, there was a sense of urgency beyond belief. Ken and I felt panicked that we just watched a serial killer walk out of this room.
Bye. Yeah, thank you.
No doubt about it that Womack and Robinson did the right thing. Well, any good investigator in their shoes is not going to prematurely jump off and arrest somebody without all of the facts, without all of the information. And I'm sure that they didn't want to jeopardize either Santa Cruz County or Marin County's homicides investigations. They did the right thing.
Carpenter left Robinson and Womack at 3 p.m. that Friday, knowing the police were on to him. Keaton got a call from Robinson at the same time and was moving to set up surveillance and warrants. But those few hours gave Carpenter time to start disposing of evidence. He was still one step ahead. By 9 p.m. that night, Keaton and Prandy at Carpenter's house under their own surveillance.
It's gonna be a long night.
It would be 24 hours before the full surveillance team would be ready.
So this is his mom and dad?
Lives with his mom and dad.
We'd sit out there until the wee hours of the morning, knowing that we had to get back to work at a regular assignment the following sunup.
What was his sexual priors?
Yeah, let me take a look at this. We've got his file. About 10 years ago, did some time. Aggravated assault.
Hard time?
For the first time, they read Carpenter's record. He had previous convictions for kidnap, rape, and attempted murder, and had spent nearly 20 years in jail.
Yeah, he's got some sort of assault here using a hammer of all things. Nice guy.
Sounds like our guy.
Though under surveillance, Carpenter managed to slip away to dispose of the crucial piece of evidence by making use of an old friend from jail, Shane Williams.
Hello, Shane.
Hey, David, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I understand you have something for me?
Yeah. Something you want? For a little job you have in mind?
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Ammunition?
In the bottom there.
Nice.
Good luck.
Well, yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Take care.
Thanks.
Carpenter had obliged his friend, who had no idea that he was in possession of a gun that had killed 7 people.
We were under a time gap. We didn't want this to go into a weekend or into a holiday and lose him. We knew that, in our mind, Carpenter was our suspect. He was the responsible for all these murders. We had the warrants in our hand. the district attorneys from both counties, Santa Cruz and Marin, said it's time to contact Mr. Carpenter.
Well, they say 7:15 like clockwork. The guy's methodical.
Stony Brook from Santa Cruz and myself would approach Mr. Carpenter at his residence in view of other officers for safety reasons. We didn't know at this point in time where the gun was.
Who are you? My name's Stony Brook, Santa Cruz Police Department. Would I just ask you a few questions?
Stoney started to talk with Mr. Carpenter. Watching his body language, you could just see this man tense up, almost like a cat recoiling when the dog comes by.
I don't have time to talk about this. I have to get to work. Let me ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind, sir. About the Heather Skaggs disappearance, would you know anything about that?
That sounds like capital murder.
Well, at that point, Stony Brook reaches into his coat, pulls out a murder warrant for his arrest.
Hands up. Feedback, spread 'em. Mr. Carpenter, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will
And I
be
put
used
him up
you in a
against
court of
the
law.
adjacent building in order to search him.
Afford an attorney, the state will provide you one.
Please don't hurt me. I've always been a model inmate.
And that just repulsed me. Here's this guy who now has a murder warrant laid on him. He is now under arrest for murder, and when he can't walk away, begs and pleads about he's always been a model inmate. And the only thing that flashed through my mind were the scenes of those girls and boys that were killed. Here's this guy saying, "Don't hurt me," and look what he's done to them.
Finally, Carpenter was in custody. But as yet, the police had no hard evidence against him.
Brother.
I have a map here around town.
The investigators were hanging their hopes on the search of the house. But whatever evidence had been there was gone.
This is the area.
They found nothing to justify charging Carpenter with murder.
After the arrest in San Francisco, Carpenter was brought to the Santa Cruz County Jail. They will probably keep him here after booking instead of transferring him to the old jail for security reasons.
What we're trying to do is analyze the evidence and just see where it leads. We haven't charged anyone at this point, and we haven't done so because we haven't completed the investigation.
The investigation was going on simultaneous now with Santa Cruz putting Mr. Carpenter in a lineup and doing that as quickly as they possibly could, and having Steve Hartle identify him.
Could number 4 turn to his left?
Number 4, turn to the left.
That entire day,
center.
the Carpenter was being transported to Santa Cruz to be put in a lineup. Everyone was on pins and needles. There was like an expectant father waiting for the baby to be born, and everybody was by the phone. I mean, from secretaries to receptionists to janitors to everyone.
How about number 5 with his glasses on?
If Hartle had been
5, put your glasses on.
uncertain or in any way not been positive, that would have been the most horrendous thing for us in the world.
Number 3 with his glasses on.
All right, number 3, put your glasses on.
That's him. That's the one right there, number 3.
Yeah, Keaton. Thanks. Positive ID.
Yes!
Yes!
We may have felt very relieved and very positive about Mr. Hartle's identification, but a defense attorney only has to taint the mind of one juror, just 1 out of 12. And if there's a doubt, you may not get a conviction. So our priority at this point was to find the gun. Where is the gun?
But what police found next was not the gun. It was the decomposed remains of Heather Skaggs.
Authorities now believe that Heather Skaggs was killed at this wooded location near Big Basin Redwood State Park, where she was found. Murdered like other Trailside victims. 2 hikers found her nude body, her clothing missing from the scene. Like 3 other victims, she was dead of a gunshot wound to the head. Investigators for the State Department of Justice will now make ballistics tests on the bullet to see if it matches evidence in other Trailside murders. The weapon that was used was a .38 caliber revolver, and so far hasn't been recovered.
Ballistics tests proved that it was the same gun. And Trailside investigators were about to get their luckiest break yet.
Hey, that's our guy.
Got him.
Shane, get up against the wall. Now, get up against the wall. Don't move.
My name's not Shane, man.
How come you moved for Shane?
Shane Williams was wanted on charges of bank robbery and parole violations.
Relax.
A hapless robber, he had left his girlfriend's student ID and their hotel bill on the bank counter after the holdup.
So you're not Shane, how come it says Shane? Okay.
All right, just come with us.
After Carpenter's arrest, Williams realized that the gun Carpenter had given him was probably connected to the killings, maybe even the murder weapon. So he hid it, keeping it back as a bargaining chip if he should ever need it.
Oh. I got something you guys might want. If you're interested, let me know. I'm back here, ready to talk.
He told the cops where it was in return for lenient treatment on the charges against him.
Shane Williams told the lieutenant that he had gotten the gun from Carpenter, that he had folded it up in newspapers and hid it under some asphalt. At the lot, under the asphalt, wrapped in newspaper, was the gun. Lieutenant brought the gun back to the sheriff's office, and we all were amazed. It was a little bit of luck, finally. A little bit of luck. The biggest sigh of relief was when the laboratory called our office and said, "We've got the gun. It matches on all the homicides." If you recall, when he shot and killed Miss Hanson, and then shot Stephen Hartle,
I heard 3 shots go off, and then I went and she fell to the ground, and I ran up to her, and then I heard 2 more shots go off.
that's 5 bullets. And he had a revolver, but it was a 5-shot revolver. If he had 1 more bullet, we wouldn't have Stephen Hartle as a witness. And we may still be looking for the Trailside Killer.
Carpenter was tried twice. First for the Santa Cruz killings, then for the Marin offenses. Throughout both the trials, he pleaded his innocence. But both juries reached unanimous verdicts, finding him guilty on 3 counts of rape, 1 attempted murder, and 7 murders in the first degree. On July 19, 1988, he was sentenced to death. But the case remains under appeal, and David Carpenter is still alive. He is now the oldest man on death row in San Quentin Jail, just a few miles from Mount Tamalpais. To this day, he continues to claim that he is innocent.
The denials, only he can answer. The evidence is overwhelming. And you would think if he had any sort of decency at all, maybe he could speak with us, enlighten us, and tell us what happened. If not to these victims, maybe others. That day will never happen. Coming back up here 22 years after those investigations all started, it's very hard to explain to the families why. Why so long? 22 years after their loved ones had been murdered and gone, he's still alive.
March 17th, 1985. As Maria Hernandez was driving home from a night out with friends, she was oblivious to the car following her. That same night, a young lawyer, Veronica Yu, decided she would have to stop her car and try to shake off the man following her. It was a fateful decision.
What are you doing? Why are you following me?
Oh, I wasn't. I just thought I knew
You don't know me! I'm calling for the police! Oh my God! Leave me alone, please! No!
Pinche puta.
A trail of terror had begun, and one man was responsible, Richard Ramirez. He had moved to Los Angeles a few years back from the small town of El Paso in Texas. The son of a Mexican policeman, he lived the life of a loner, hanging around sleaze pits and squalid hotel rooms, getting high on cocaine. Richard's early 20s had been dominated by an obsession with Satanism, which he later said was fueled by heavy metal music in which he found hidden demonic messages. Alone in LA, he retreated into a dark world of fantasy, a world of domination, cruelty, and intense sadistic sexual encounters. That spring, something inside Richard Ramirez snapped. His cravings could no longer be satisfied by fantasies alone. The hunt for Richard Ramirez would take many months and plunge all those involved into a world of terror. One man who got to know this case from the inside is author Philip Carlo. Along with Detective Gil Carrillo, Carlo ate, drank, and slept with the Night Stalker case for 3 years.
Richard Ramirez entered people's souls, entered people's minds. He was a living, breathing nightmare. He was all our fears come true.
For Deputy Gil Carrillo, the nightmare began late that evening in March 1985. At 34, he was the Homicide Squad's youngest member, but had already worked on over 100 murder cases.
Gil was in bed. It was a Sunday night. He reluctantly climbed out of bed, not having any idea about the nightmare he was about to enter.
We got 2 victims here, both female. First one's Maria Hernandez, 20 years old. She's at the Beverly. The next one's the roommate, Dale Okazaki. She's 34, didn't make it.
What about Hernandez? Look like is she gonna make it?
Yeah, she's in stable condition over at
guess.
Beverly. Yeah, lucky girl.
Why's that?
House key deflected the bullet, saved her life probably.
It's pretty damn lucky.
Yeah.
By a freak stroke of luck, Maria Hernandez's life had been saved by the keys she held in her hand. Her roommate, Dale Okazaki, had not been so fortunate. The killer had spotted her hiding behind a kitchen counter. He'd shot her in the forehead.
So this hat, where's this from?
Well, we're pretty sure it's the shooter's hat.
AC/DC, isn't that some heavy metal band or something like that?
Yeah, Highway to Hell. It's a great album.
You say so.
Maria later confirmed that the hat belonged to the killer. This AC/DC hat was to provide a vital clue in the months to come. Maria was also able to help a police artist produce a drawing of her assailant.
All Maria Hernandez could tell Gil was that he wore all black, he had very scary eyes, and he had an odd smell. And Gil said, like, what do you mean an odd smell? You mean like B.O.? And she said, no, it's a different kind of smell, more like almost a dead body.
Maria is to be one of the very few who saw that face and lived to tell the tale.
Gil was a young Hispanic, brought up in East Los Angeles, which is a tough neighborhood. And Gil could have easily gone in another way in life, but he ended up working as a policeman. He had an uncanny ability to look at a crime scene and know what happened, and had a large degree of what we call street sense. He ended up being made a homicide cop very early on.
Carrillo had only spent 9.5 years as a policeman before being made a homicide detective. It would usually take a minimum of 15 years. He had come to be noticed through his work on Operation Safe Streets, the first plainclothes unit to infiltrate the notorious gangs of East LA.
Come on. You guys have 10 minutes. Let's go.
Buenos dias, Mommy. Good
The son of Mexican immigrants, Carrillo had worked hard to provide a comfortable life for his family. In 1985, they were living in a quiet, leafy suburb of East LA.
Ladies, come on, let's go.
You guys better get moving.
I'll pack your lunch. Egg. Hurry.
That March morning, the toughest case in Gil Carrillo's life had just begun, and it would threaten all he held dear before it was over.
May I? Wait here a second. This is from a case that I caught last week. Young girl abducted, restrained with thumb cuffs, sexually assaulted. Look familiar?
Yeah, see your point.
Hey, Gil, I got something new here for you.
As well as the similarity between the two drawings, the ballistics reports from the Okazaki and Yu murders suggested another possible connection. Both bullets were from a .22 caliber revolver and had probably been fired from the same weapon, though the casings were too badly damaged to be absolutely certain.
When he heard that there had been a second shooting that night, Gil didn't think much of it at first, but then he heard that a .22 caliber gun had been used. And something just clicked in his head. And at that point, he was thinking, there might be something going on here that's unusual.
It dawned on Carrillo that he might have a different kind of killer on his hands. If the same person was responsible for the child assaults and the shootings, that pointed to a serial killer. A killer who would continue to kill until he was stopped. Carrillo started searching police records for any mention of suspects dressed in black, who listened to heavy metal and had known sadistic tendencies. Only 8 days after the murder of Dale Okazaki and Veronica Yu, someone broke into the house of Vincent and Maxine Zazara in the affluent community of Whittier. They were both shot dead. Maxine Zazara was mutilated, and bizarrely, the killer removed her eyes and took them with him. When Carrillo found out that a .22 caliber gun was used in the Zazara murders, he was keen to talk to the detectives investigating the case. His suspicion that these recent crimes were connected was further aroused when detectives mentioned that a footprint found at the Zazara's house matched one found at yet another child abduction.
May not be the same guy, but definitely the same type of shoe. Who was that? Start with a name.
Avia, size 11.5. Big foot.
I think you're looking for the same guy. One suspect.
What are you saying? One shoe, one size fits all?
As the youngest member of the homicide squad, Carrillo found it difficult to gain support for his theory.
And he was kind of considered the new kid on the block, and it was hard for him, a little bit difficult for him to get across the point that, hey, I think we're dealing with a serial killer. And what you have to keep in mind is that there are hundreds of murders that happen every year in Los Angeles, and there are dozens, if not hundreds, of investigators. So you don't have the same person going on at the same scene, and it's very difficult even to develop the information that you are dealing with a serial killer because not everybody talks to each other.
Carrillo was convinced that a serial killer was on the loose, but an unusual one. Because unlike most serial killers, this one had no pattern, assaulting and murdering victims with no obvious similarity in age, race, or background. There was one man who he thought would listen to him, someone who knew the territory, someone with direct experience of hunting down serial killers.
What you got?
Frank Salerno is a very unusual man, and he was known as the best homicide man in Los Angeles. When these crimes began, it was interesting how these two guys got together because you had an older, seasoned, hardcore homicide guy and a young, hungry homicide cop.
I'm telling you it's the same guy, Frank. I feel it right here.
You gotta go out there and you gotta do the homework. The guy's a pervert. You go out there and you check every single sex offender that has just gotten out. That's the way you gotta do it.
And Frank was skeptical, but he believed that it's possible. A good homicide man always has an open mind. Frank was the only guy in that office that believed Gil could be on to something.
Frank Salerno was the lead detective, and
He was very well respected, very experienced, having been involved in the Hillside strangling case. And Gil was relatively new to homicide at that point in time. So I'm sure it would have meant a lot to Gil to have Frank support whatever theories that he was putting out there.
Although many of his colleagues remained skeptical, because of the evidence of the shoe print and the ballistics, Carrillo managed to convince Salerno that he had a case. A small task force was set up.
We're using red for the murders, these for abductions and for rapes, okay?
As they began to investigate further, Carrillo had an uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. He felt certain that the killer would strike again, and that he would strike soon. For Richard Ramirez, the act of killing had become the ultimate high, an addiction more potent than anything he'd ever experienced before, and he craved the next fix.
Good night. You rest well. Okay. Have good dreams. You too. Good night, dear. Good night.
The pile of newspapers outside Mabel Bell's door made her gardener Carlos suspicious. He'd been taking care of her yard for years and was worried that the soaring heat of the last few days had taken its toll on the two elderly sisters.
Senora Bell? Senora Bell?
Mabel Bell and her invalid sister Nettie Lang had been tortured, electrocuted, and beaten to death. This time, the killer had the audacity to pause for food and drink before he left.
Gil and Frank was so hoping perhaps there would be a fingerprint on either one of the cans, but there was no prints because he always wore gloves.
Although the killer left no fingerprints, he did leave what would become an identifying mark.
They found a pentagram drawn on the wall, and they found a pentagram on one of the victims' thighs.
The pentagram is a symbol of the occult, associated with satanic worship.
Gil was trying to understand the significance of this pentagram and how it would play into the crimes, and he remembered the AC/DC hat that he found in the Marie Hernandez garage. And he went and asked his daughter about this group, and she said AC/DC was like a bad boy group that were satanic in nature. There was one song in particular called Night Prowler, and it talked about a killer going out and looking in blinds and stalking people, which was exactly what was going on.
Carrillo and his team also found another Avia footprint, this time in blood, on an alarm clock found at the scene.
Jerry, it's from the old lady's place off the alarm clock. I need everything there is to know about this abuse snippet. Everything. And Jerry, I need it yesterday.
I know. I'm on it.
Thanks, buddy.
I was brand new in the physical evidence section. I was working here, and my supervisor brought to me a couple of plaster casts and a clock with a partial shoe print on it, and asked me to compare the evidence from 3 different scenes just to see if the shoe impressions could have been caused by the same shoe. And so I conducted examinations on them, checking for size and overall length and width and things like that. They were trying to find anything they could at that time to link certain cases.
Yeah, hold on.
A few days after the horrific attack on the two old ladies, Correa was called out to an attempted break-in in his mother's neighborhood, Pico Rivera.
I'm on my way.
The same Avila footprint had been found. The address was only 3 blocks from his childhood home, where his mother and sister still lived.
Mama, I need you to do something for me right away, okay? I need you to go and lock all the windows in the house and lock the doors too, okay? I'm not trying to scare you, Mama. There's a real bad son of a bitch in the neighborhood, okay? Just do that for me, all right? And I'll see you later. Okay. I love you too.
Knowing the killer had been out stalking in his own neighborhood deeply disturbed Correa. The threat was now personal, a menace to all he held dear: his home, his family, his community. And he had no idea when the killer was going to strike again, where he would strike, or why. The next day, LAPD motorcycle officer John Stavros pulled over a man in dark clothing for running a red light. As he was phoning through the man's details, he missed hearing an urgent police radio call. But the man in black didn't.
Attempted abduction. Suspect is a Hispanic male, driving a dark-colored car, maybe armed and dangerous. Please respond.
Richard Ramirez fled before Stavros could connect him with the wanted man. It was a mistake which was to cost the police dearly. May 30th. 42-year-old Carol Kyle was brutally assaulted. She later described her attacker as tall, good-looking, Hispanic, with bad teeth and a pungent body odor. June 27th. 28-year-old Patty Higgins was assaulted and stabbed to death. Her throat cut so deeply, she was almost beheaded. July 2nd. 75-year-old Mary Cannon was beaten and stabbed to death. Her throat slit in the same way as Patty Higgins. Crime scene investigators were starting to detect a pattern. All 3 houses had been ransacked, their phones disabled with the cord ripped out, and they found another shoe print. The pressure was mounting for Carrillo and his team. They felt they were getting nowhere fast.
There's a person out there who's killing innocent people, and you want him to be captured. You want to do everything in your power to be captured, and you're always lying awake at night and saying, what could I do more? You're going over the evidence again and again and again in your mind. You're going over crime scenes, and you're thinking, did I miss anything? Okay, was there anything that could have been done differently?
Despite their best efforts, the killings continued. "16-year-old Whitney Bennett returned to her home in the affluent suburb of Sierra Madre around 1 in the morning. She'd been out celebrating the 4th of July with friends and was late. Her parents had also been out partying, but had returned around midnight and were soundly asleep. The events of that night would change the Bennett family's lives forever.
It was very scary walking into that house, to walk in there and realize that her parents were just down the hall in their bedroom, and here she was in the front room. There was no sign of forced entry, and later we found out that he just came in through the front door to have beaten her as badly as she was beaten and as much as she bled. And then for him to just leave through the bedroom window, it was very scary that someone wasn't seen, no one heard anything.
I heard my daughter moaning. I thought she was sick, and all I know,
When Stephen Bennett found his daughter in the early hours of the morning, she'd been beaten with a tire iron, struck more than 20 times. She had 42 separate lacerations to the head. Doctors were astonished that she'd survived.
I hadn't seen that much blood at many crime scenes. I was actually surprised that she lived.
Both Frank and Gil had daughters the same age as this girl was. And it really, really got to them. It really, really struck home. And she needed 478 stitches to sew the wounds closed, and she was very close to death. And it affected them very personally. I mean, this is more than just a nameless, faceless person being attacked and dumped in the street somewhere. This guy is entering people's homes in the middle of the night.
It's too small. We'll get you to get the figurine in just a second. Okay, we've got some.
We had found a pile of clothing items and bedding laying between the bed and the closet. And we just decided we were going to go through them because there was so much blood on the carpeting. We thought just in case someone happened to step in it. And we were just moving items of clothing, looking at them front and back. And there was a pink comforter. And sure enough, there was an impression in blood. It was obviously a shoe impression on this pink comforter.
I'm gonna have forensics come down and dust for prints and for the floor for a footprint. Yeah.
Hey guys, I got something you might want to check out.
It was very exciting because that solidified that, yes, in fact, we do have a serial murderer.
Frank, this is our guy.
Let's get it to the lab.
What you got, Jerry? Oh, what we've got is one very exclusive item of footwear. Do we? Yes, it appears only 1,345 of the Avia 440s were ever made. Only 6 ever made their way to California. But wait till you hear this. Only one is a size 11.5. Our boy is wearing the only pair in LA. One of a kind.
When I found out that there was only one shoe sold in that size in the Los Angeles area, it's very exciting in a sense that we know now that we're dealing with a very unique set of circumstances. And you know that if this person keeps using this shoe, that the cases are going to be easier to link and it's going to mean more. The evidence is going to be more conclusive.
It was now acknowledged that a ferocious serial killer was loose on the streets of Los Angeles, and that Carrillo had been right all along. All these crimes, all this carnage and suffering was caused by one man. The need to find him became more urgent with each passing hour.
Gentlemen, ladies, Gil was right.
He felt vindicated. He felt that the people that laughed at him and didn't believe him now looked at him in a different way. And they didn't see now an inexperienced guy. They saw somebody who knew what he was talking about. They saw somebody whose instincts were right on the money.
Pursuing the killer was a punishing task. Carrillo and his colleagues were working long days and often overnight, and rarely saw their families.
Good night, guys. See you in a few hours. Get some sleep.
His wife was frightened to be alone. She was complaining to him that he was in the house. You have to understand, he was now working double and triple shifts. He wasn't coming home. She was sleeping alone. They have 3 young children in the house, and she was petrified. And he said he was doing his best, that they were going to get this guy. She was like, Gil, you know, you'll get him, but meanwhile the crimes are continuing. And it kind of angered him, but he understood that she was frightened like everyone else in Los Angeles.
By July, Pearl was often spending nights away from home, staying with friends and in-laws.
And he was kind of bowled over because he's the man of the house. He's a cop. He carries a gun. And here his own wife is telling him she don't want to be in his house.
At that point in time, knowing the types of neighborhoods that the Night Stalker was going into, they were very quiet neighborhoods, not a lot of traffic, but they had good freeway access for somebody to escape. I was starting to personally get very scared. I perceived my neighborhood as one where this person could be lurking around. You have to remember we were going through a heat wave, temperatures 90s, 100s most of the time, so we never opened windows, which didn't sit well with my husband. He said, you don't have to worry, I'm here, and I couldn't. And to this day I can't. I cannot sleep with open windows at night.
July 7th, 63-year-old psychiatric nurse Sophie Dickman was awoken in bed by a man dressed in black. She was beaten and raped. The house was ransacked. As she asked for mercy, her attacker made her swear on Satan. That same night, 61-year-old Joyce Nelson was beaten and strangled to death. It was the 5th attack in little over a week.
One of the theories of forensic science is that you really can't walk into any kind of building or any place without leaving some trace that you'd been there. And it's our job to try to find out what what those traces are and what they eventually mean.
We knew to concentrate on shoe impressions, any areas that might retain a shoe impression. And at Joyce Nelson, in fact, there was one.
They found the Avia shoe print on this woman's face. The killer kicked her so hard that he left a permanent imprint on her face. And Frank and Gil are looking at this elderly woman and knowing that it could have been their mother, it could have been anyone's mother, and again, it just turned up the heat.
In those first few scorching weeks of July, the press got wind of the investigation, and now even the police weren't denying it. A serial killer and a brutal rapist was prowling the streets of Los Angeles.
Initially, it wasn't publicized because I did think they didn't want to panic people. But at the point in time in July where we had Whitney Bennett, Joyce Nelson, we had Mary Cannon, all within a 2-week period, at that point in time, it was released to the media that you have to be careful. You've got to lock your windows and doors. There is a serial murderer out there.
When the sun goes down in Southern California these days, there is a corresponding rise in the level of fear among many of this region's 10 million inhabitants. People are terrified they may be the next victim of a killer who has come to be known as the Night Stalker.
Although the police had an idea of the killer's appearance, this did little to calm the citizens of Los Angeles.
Is it safe to sleep with the upstairs windows open?
You should not sleep with your windows or your doors open.
And it's pretty hot here. There's no air conditioning. We've got fans and stuff, and we lock everything up now.
And sometimes they would get a little bit ghoulish because they would be sometimes wait out there for 8-9 hours while you're doing your investigation inside, and you go outside and they ask you, well, when are you going to bring out the body? Because they wanted that shot. The mood of Los Angeles was very pensive, very panicked, and very fearful. It was just almost like a thick cloud that hung in the air at that time.
I said 11. 11 and a half. We're talking a big-footed guy here.
The intense media attention resulted in Carrillo getting a stream of calls from across Southern California, from police officers who thought they might have captured the killer.
Homicide, Carrillo.
There was several frustrating times because they knew they had a serial killer, and it seemed that they were trying to tie every case in the county to that. They were examining every case, every shoe print that came through to see if they were somehow connected.
In the early hours of July 20th, Max and Layla Nighting, aware of the dangerous killer at loose in LA, thought that they had made their house secure. The couple were both shot to death, but not before their attacker had slashed at them with a machete in an attempt to behead them. And still he was not satisfied, and no one could stop him.
She was able to help construct a very good likeness of the man that raped her and killed her husband. And that sketch was given to every single policeman in Los Angeles County, and they had it on their visor of their car.
News of the latest killing spree pushed the population of Southern California in a greater fear and panic.
Los Angeles County is a huge county, and there are 10 million people in this city alone. He could strike anyone. There were many times when I thought that, he's never going to be captured. I almost became hopeless.
It's shocking. It changes your lifestyle. You feel like you're being held hostage.
There was panic. People were scared.
Gun shop owners were finding lines of people in front of the stores wanting to buy firearms.
There were not many things that stood in his way that stopped him from getting into homes if that's what he wanted to do.
Just scared to death, and how much can you do to protect yourself?
Everybody wanted extra locks, everybody wanted alarms, everyone wanted extra light because they feared the Night Stalker.
There were cases where he came in through pet doors.
He had the advantage at that time of knowing where he was going to strike next.
The next place the killer chose was Diamond Bar, a suburb near to Gil Carrillo's family home. This proved to be the last straw for his wife, Pearl.
When? Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Where to now?
Diamond Bar.
You're joking. Gil, tell me that you're joking.
You want to see what I wrote on this paper here? It says Diamond Bar. Pearl. Pearl, where are you going?
We are going. And the kids.
So, Pearl, you gotta let me do my job.
Gil, we are scared. I'm scared. The kids are scared. You know, everybody is scared.
Pearl, I'll take you over to my mom's when I get back. Just let me do what I gotta do.
Oh, no, I don't think so. You are going nowhere. You hear me? Nowhere until you make sure that we are safe. Ned is not here.
Pearl, don't do this.
This really upset him. I mean, he was crestfallen because his home life, the thing that he cherished the most, he was losing, literally. Though he knew she was right. And reluctantly, he packed her things in the car and he drove his wife and his 3 children to his in-law's house. And when he saw his father-in-law, it really brought home how helpless he was and how he wasn't doing what he should be doing, which is protecting his own family.
When Gil finally arrived at the Diamond Bar crime scene, he found another woman who'd been raped while her husband lay dying next to her.
When you go to the crime scenes and you see what this person has done, you know, like shooting a husband in the head and while he's sleeping, and then assaulting the wife, you know, right next to the body of her dead or dying husband, it just infuriates you. And there's part of, I guess, the male macho mystique or whatever you want to call it, that almost makes you wish that he would try to break into your house. Instead of attacking innocent women, helpless women, why don't you come after me?
It was hard. The best we could do at that time was to link things. So it was very, very long days. Phone calls from Frank and Gil. Did you find anything new, anything you want to let me know about? And in some instances, waiting for a phone call that he had struck again.
Gil was working 2 and 3 shifts. He was working 20 hours, 24 hours. When he came home, he was bone tired. And he opened the door and the house was empty. His family was gone. And it upset him deeply, profoundly inside. He took to keeping a loaded gun right by the bed, which he never did before. It's a dangerous thing to do because you don't know what you can do when you're in a deep sleep, when you're having a nightmare. He'd wake up in a cold sweat, grab his gun, and search the house thinking the stalker somehow, in some strange way, found out where he lived. At this point, all everybody's talking about is the Night Stalker. The first thing people are talking about over breakfast are these Night Stalker crimes. The last thing people are talking about before they go to sleep are the Night Stalker crimes. And the killer is sensing the heat. He sees that there are a lot more cops that are being a lot more attentive, and he's thinking it's time to maybe make himself scarce in Los Angeles. And he went to San Francisco.
In mid-August, Carrillo and his team were informed of the shooting of an elderly Taiwanese couple, Peter and Barbara Pan, in San Francisco. The house had been ransacked, and on the bedroom wall, written in lipstick, was a pentagram and the words, "Jack the Knife." The Night Stalker was now venturing even further afield, and no Californian felt safe. While the killer was expanding his hunting ground, all the police could do was play catch-up. There was no biological evidence. The only things they had to go on were the bullet casings and the Avia shoe prints.
To try to help the San Francisco cops, they told them about the small caliber gun. They told them about the Avia shoe print. And what they told them slowly passed up the chain of command to Mayor Dianne Feinstein, and she got it in her head to hold a press conference.
The ballistics on the weapons that killed both Mr. and Mrs. Pan are the same ballistics on, I understand, more than a dozen murders committed in Southern California. I've authorized $10,000 for information.
Is that Feinstein?
What was she thinking?
As well as disclosing the police's ballistic evidence, Mayor Feinstein went on to reveal that they were also using the Avia footprint to link suspected Night Stalker cases. While she may have deemed this information to be important to calm a frightened public, her revelations infuriated the investigators.
It was, I suppose, typical of a politician, but it doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand that if you've got evidence that you're building a case against a person who isn't caught yet, you don't let it out.
Once it was released that that's how these cases were being tracked, at that point we stopped seeing the Avia.
The killer saw the press conference, gathered up the guns, got those shoes, put them in a bag, walked out into the Golden Gate Bridge, and he dropped them in the ocean, and they were lost forever.
Just as the police investigation threatened to fall apart, their luck began to change.
A young boy came into play. His name was James Romero. It was his birthday, and he'd been given a bike, and he couldn't sleep. He was in the garage cleaning the bike, and it's late. It's like 12:30 at night. When the killer got off the freeway, he drove down James' block. The moment he was driving past him, James looked up and he saw a man drive by, and for the briefest of moments, this boy locked eyes with the killer. After the Night Stalker passed James O'Mara's house, he took a left turn, drove 2 blocks, and parked. He entered the home of a sleeping couple. He shot the male, and he dragged the female by her hair into the room, and he told her, "Tell the police that the Night Stalker did this. Tell Frank Salerno and Gil Carrillo that the Night Stalker did this crime."
But as the Night Stalker drove back to the freeway, he was unaware that he was being watched. James Romero seized the opportunity to write down the license number. It was the lucky break that the police had been praying for. As the police searched for the orange vehicle, another vital lead came through. Finally, as August 1985 drew to a close, the web of evidence surrounding the Night Stalker began to tighten.
Is this homicide? This is a guy on the street, and I think I got somebody that you're looking for. I know who he is. The guy that, that guy that's been doing those bad things to people.
When the killer went to San Francisco, as it turned out, it was the beginning of the end for him. A piece of jewelry that he took from the Pan residence, he gave to a fellow burglar that he knew, who in turn gave it to a girlfriend. And the police published photographs of this particular piece of jewelry in the newspaper. These people saw it, they realized there was money in it for them, they ran to the cops, and they said, "We know who the Night Stalker is."
The police were given the name Rick Ramirez. Finally, they had a name for the man who had preyed upon the city for the last 6 months. On entering the names Rick, Richard, or Ricardo Ramirez into their computers, the police discovered that there were vast numbers of them on file. While the task force were trying to narrow down the names, the orange vehicle was found.
That was exhilarating to know that a vehicle had been found and he had slipped up and left a fingerprint impression. And that's what ultimately led to an identification on him.
He was very specific in getting rid of his fingerprints. He didn't want the police to have his fingerprints. But on this night, he adjusted the rearview mirror. And in adjusting the rearview mirror, he left one fingerprint.
When they fed the fingerprint into the computer, it identified one person, Richard Munoz Ramirez, a petty criminal from El Paso, Texas, who had been picked up by the LAPD for a car theft the year before. His police mugshot had been in the system all this time. The Night Stalker had been identified, and the police had to make a critical decision.
There was some question as to whether they wanted to broadcast it over the news, but I think Detective Salerno made the call that yeah, we should broadcast it, and we should make it public and just get the public's help in trying to track him down.
And the next morning, that photograph was on the front page of every single newspaper in America.
The only problem was Ramirez had left town days earlier.
And the Saturday morning that all the newspapers came out, he had no idea he'd been identified as the Night Stalker. He, in fact, was coming back into Los Angeles on a bus. Frank Salerno and Gil ordered detectives to be looking for Ramirez to be leaving. Nobody's looking for him to be coming into Los Angeles, and lo and behold, they're looking this way, and he walks right behind them.
Ramirez was returning to a city that he had terrorized for the last 6 months. 13 inhabitants murdered, a dozen brutally assaulted, and the rest of its population living in fear. It was a city that was now familiar with his face and determined to end the nightmare Ramirez had begun.
¿Café?
Sí, un café, sí.
Resurrection.
No, not resurrection. The one with the boat.
Matador.
Policía, el Night Stalker, el matador Ricardo Marín está
He ended up on a street called Hubbard Street in East LA, which is a tough neighborhood. And everyone knew on that block that a Hispanic had been identified as the stalker, and they all hated him. They all wanted a piece of him. This fellow gave chase, and soon all his friends, all his neighbors, Ramirez had a mob of angry Mexican men chasing him, looking to do him. And they would have killed him. They were intent upon killing him. And a police car rolled up, and it was the police that saved Richard Ramirez that day.
Back up. Ramirez? Richard Ramirez? Yes, I am. Turn it over. Let's go. Come on.
¡Puto asesino maldito! ¡Vamos, maricón! ¡Te agarramos, pendejo! ¡Suéltate ahora, maricón!
Richard Ramirez was arrested on the last day of August 1985. It would be 3.5 years before he eventually went to trial. But finally, on September 20th, 1989, Ramirez was found guilty of 13 counts of murder and 30 other felonies. He was sentenced to the gas chamber and still awaits his execution.
Relief. We were collecting bloodstains on Hubbard Street, and a helicopter that was doing surveillance photos of the area was circling above us, and they came on over the PA system that in fact the Night Stalker, aka Richard Ramirez, had been captured and he'd been identified. They had him back at a Hollenbeck station, and it was him. It was definitively him. And it was, and the neighbors, the people that were crowding around watching us process the crime scene, started to clap, and everybody was very excited. It was a feeling of relief.
When I asked Gil about how he felt that day, when he got home that night, he started crying. And he told me he felt a vindication, all along he felt responsible for capturing this man. He felt these were crimes that were happening on his beat, on his watch, and he was responsible for bringing this guy down. And he did finally bring him down.
Bizarrely, since his capture, Ramirez has become something of a celebrity, a death row sex symbol. During the trial, he attracted a female fan club who turned up to see him every day in court. Shooting them flirtatious smiles and taunting victims' families with satanic symbols, he never once showed any sign of remorse. In 1996, Ramirez actually married one of his admirers. But back in the summer of 1985, as he shot, slashed, and raped his way across Los Angeles, no woman would have chosen to catch the attention of the Night Stalker.
Was this Satan? Was it a madman? Who is capable of such things? That's what everyone was asking themselves, and there was no answer. And there still is no answer. To this day, nobody really knows why those crimes were committed. What hatred, what anger motivated this man to do these terrible, terrible, terrible things.